Welcome to a session on the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. So, Frederick Douglass, the author himself. This work, you know, uh, he was an American slave. Frederick Douglass himself, he was an American slave, and it is a very important work in American literature because it is actually a true testament, or you actually see it as a document that talks about the horrors of slavery and how this character showed the utmost form of resilience to actually come out of it. So this was a text that contributed to the abolitionist movement that we later, that was growing in American history. And so, about Frederick Douglass from slave to abolitionist. So, he was enslaved. He was born to slavery in Maryland in 1818. And Douglass, he had to endure a brutal childhood of physical abuse and relentless oppression. So, this was the background of Frederick Douglass before he wrote this narrative. And then in 1838, we see him escaping to freedom. So, he bravely escapes to freedom in the North. He goes to the North because North was in general a little lenient in terms of slavery, not little, very much lenient towards slavery, and which was the pivotal moment that marked that has to be marked for the change in his life. And then he becomes an abolitionist leader. So Douglass, he emerged as a prominent abolitionist orator and a writer, using his powerful voice to expose the evils of slavery and advocate for the end of this unjust system. So he becomes an important character in the abolitionist movement. And Douglas's early life and escape from slavery. So, what happened to, as mentioned earlier, Douglas's early life, it was marked by a lot of cruelty that he faced, and he had to go through first-hand experience. He had to personally go through the dehumanizing. It just strips off the feeling of being a human from you, being a slave. We are treated like animals, and he was enslaved, and there was this devastating impact of the system on families and individuals that Frederick Douglass knew. And then you have the freedom, the place where he became free. So, despite all the hardships that he faced, he had this optimistic viewpoint towards life where he looked forward to being free and he worked towards it. That is, he developed a deep longing for education. So, this was a key turning point in his life where he, thought that, where he started believing that education was the change that he needed and escape to a new life. So he embarked on a very dangerous, journey, leaving behind the life he knew to embrace the life of freedom and self-determination. So then we see, many different. He actually gives us a picture of what were the dehumanizing aspects of slavery. There is physical abuse, there is brutality that the slaves have to face, the whipping and the beating and all these things. And then you have the separation of families where the families are torn apart, they are sent off to different places, and there is no more the feeling of family, love, and kinship, and all those things because you know the families were separated, and then there is obviously the denial of human rights. So you have no, opportunity to gain education. You do not have the right to own property. You do not have the right to freedom of the movement. So it is altogether something that it's beyond our imagination itself. So Douglas's efforts to educate himself, this is something that we get to understand. So his thirst for knowledge is something that he, emulates through his work. So despite the strict limitations imposed by slavery, Douglas developed an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and that was what actually gained him freedom. And he secretly learned to read and write, defying the laws that prohibited enslaved people from acquiring education. Then you have self education that you see. These are the important points. So, first is want for knowledge, then you see self education. So, Douglas, he embraced every opportunity to learn, diligently reading and absorbing information, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to self improvement. Then you see the power of education. So, he has gained self education, and then we see what education is helping him with. So he recognized the transformative power of education, believing that knowledge could unlock the chains of slavery. And then finally, we see the importance of literacy. So he understood it was important, it was essential for liberation. And he actively sought out opportunities to learn and teach others. Okay, and the power of literacy and self-determination, according to him, he says it breaks you free from ignorance. Otherwise, you just believe in all these concepts and you do not change. You just live in it. And he proved that even in the face of oppression, the human spirit can thirst for knowledge and strive for self-improvement. So there is also the unleashing the power of words that you see and in the work, literacy becomes Douglas's weapon against the system of slavery. And he uses his writing to expose the injustices of slavery and to inspire others to join the fight for freedom. And finally, the empowering factor. So his journey to literacy, it inspired countless enslaved people to seek education and knowledge, and it empowered them to fight for their own liberation and break free the chains of oppression. And then you see Douglas's role in the abolitionist movement. He was a powerful orator. At the same time, he was an influential writer. And then you can see the legacy and lasting impact of narrative of Frederick Douglass. In the narrative masterpiece that he created, the work that we are studying right now, the advocate. He was an advocate of equality for equality. He stood against this biggest injustice that people would have faced in the history of humankind, and he was also a champion of human rights. So, with that, we come to an end to the session. Thank you.